Hollywood's golden age looked flawless on the silver screen, but behind the cameras, another story was unfolding. While studios carefully protected their biggest stars, whispers of secret habits, hidden scandals, and private lives quietly spread through Tinseltown. Some of cinema's most celebrated names were linked to a world the public was never meant to see. In this video, we're uncovering the stories of 9 legendary Hollywood icons whose off-screen lives were just as unforgettable as their greatest performances. Stay until the end, because the final name may completely change the way you see classic Hollywood. Actor number 1: Robert Mitchum. Long before Hollywood embraced a more relaxed image, one name became closely associated with a controversy that stunned the entire film industry: Robert Mitchum. Famous for his calm voice, effortless confidence, and unforgettable screen presence, Mitchum built his reputation as one of classic cinema's toughest leading men. But behind that iconic image, his personal life often attracted as much attention as his performances. In 1948, Mitchum made headlines after being arrested during a marijuana investigation, a story that quickly spread across newspapers nationwide. At a time when even a rumor could destroy an actor's career, many believed this scandal would mark the end of his time in Hollywood. Studio executives faced enormous pressure, critics predicted his downfall, and the public watched closely to see what would happen next. Surprisingly, the outcome was very different. Instead of disappearing from the spotlight, Mitchum's rebellious image became even more fascinating to audiences. His quiet confidence and refusal to appear defeated transformed him into a symbol of Hollywood's unconventional side. Over the years, stories about his relaxed personality and off-screen attitude only added to the mystery that surrounded him, although many anecdotes from that era remain difficult to verify today. Film historians often point to this episode as one of the earliest examples of a celebrity scandal that failed to end a major career. Rather than defining Robert Mitchum by a single controversial moment, moviegoers continued to admire the performances that made him a legend. His story remains a reminder that, in classic Hollywood, the line between public image and private life was often far more complicated than it appeared. Actor number 2: Louis Armstrong. To millions of fans, Louis Armstrong was the man whose unforgettable trumpet and unmistakable voice helped redefine American music. His influence reached far beyond jazz, making him one of the most recognizable entertainers of the 20th century. But away from the stage and movie cameras, Armstrong also held personal views that challenged the social attitudes of his era. Unlike many celebrities who avoided controversial subjects, Armstrong spoke openly about his belief that cannabis should not be viewed in the same way as dangerous narcotics. In letters, interviews, and personal writings, he described it as something he believed helped him relax, manage stress, and maintain his creative focus. Those opinions stood in sharp contrast to the strict anti-marijuana climate that dominated America throughout much of his career. Because Armstrong was both a recording artist and a film performer, every public appearance carried enormous risk. Any controversy had the potential to damage not only his concerts but also his relationships with studios, television producers, and sponsors. Even so, he rarely abandoned his personal opinions, earning a reputation among friends as someone who preferred honesty over carefully crafted public image. Historians continue to debate the extent to which cannabis influenced his creative process, but there is little doubt that Armstrong became one of the earliest major entertainers willing to discuss the subject publicly. His openness reflected a personality that was confident enough to challenge accepted ideas, even when doing so could invite criticism. Whether audiences remember him for his groundbreaking music, his unforgettable performances on screen, or his willingness to speak his mind, Louis Armstrong's legacy extends far beyond controversy. His career reminds us that some of history's greatest artists were often far more complex than the polished image presented to the public. Actor number 3: Dennis Hopper. By the time Dennis Hopper became a symbol of Hollywood's rebellious spirit, his reputation had already begun taking shape behind the scenes. Long before he directed or starred in films that defined an entire generation, Hopper was known as a fiercely independent artist who refused to fit comfortably inside the traditional studio system. His unconventional lifestyle often made as many headlines as his performances. During the 1950s and 1960s, Hollywood expected actors to maintain carefully controlled public images. Hopper, however, earned a reputation for challenging authority, questioning creative decisions, and embracing the counterculture movement that was beginning to reshape American society. Reports from friends and colleagues suggest that cannabis became part of that broader lifestyle, although many stories surrounding his personal habits have grown more dramatic with time and are difficult to verify in every detail. What remains undeniable is that Hopper believed great filmmaking required freedom, both artistic and personal. That philosophy reached its peak with Easy Rider, a film that rejected many of Hollywood's traditional rules and became a cultural phenomenon. Its success transformed Hopper from a difficult young actor into one of the defining creative voices of his era, proving that unconventional ideas could resonate with audiences around the world. Ironically, the same industry that had once viewed him as unpredictable later celebrated him as a visionary filmmaker. His journey reflected the changing values of Hollywood itself, where yesterday's outsider could suddenly become tomorrow's creative genius. Whether admired for his fearless performances or remembered as a filmmaker who challenged convention, Dennis Hopper's career stands as a reminder that some of cinema's biggest breakthroughs were driven by people who refused to follow the expected path. Actor number 4, John Huston. Some filmmakers were known for following Hollywood's rules. John Huston built his reputation by constantly pushing against them. As the acclaimed director behind classics such as The Maltese Falcon and The Treasure of the Sierra Madre, Huston earned admiration for his bold storytelling, adventurous spirit, and willingness to take creative risks that many studio executives considered far too dangerous. Unlike actors who lived under strict contracts, successful directors often enjoyed greater freedom behind the scenes. That independence allowed Huston to cultivate an image as one of Hollywood's most unconventional filmmakers. Over the years, friends, collaborators, and biographers have described him as someone who embraced an unpredictable lifestyle, with various accounts suggesting that cannabis was among the personal choices he occasionally made during different periods of his career. While many of the more dramatic stories remain difficult to confirm, they became part of the mythology surrounding his larger-than-life personality. What is beyond dispute is Huston's remarkable confidence as a storyteller. He frequently sought authentic locations, encouraged natural performances, and welcomed creative experimentation at a time when many productions followed rigid studio formulas. That fearless approach helped produce films that continue to influence directors decades later. Ironically, the same studios that sometimes viewed Huston as difficult also depended on his extraordinary talent. His movies earned critical acclaim, prestigious awards, and lasting respect, proving that originality often survives long after controversy fades. Actor number 5, Orson Welles. Few names in film history carry as much weight as Orson Welles. Before most directors had mastered the basics of filmmaking, Welles was already rewriting the rules of cinema with bold ideas, innovative camera techniques, and storytelling that seemed years ahead of its time. His groundbreaking work transformed Hollywood forever, but his creative genius was often accompanied by a reputation for ignoring convention. Throughout his career, Welles developed an image as an artist who preferred complete creative freedom over studio control. Friends and biographers have described him as someone who worked obsessively for long hours, constantly rewriting scenes, refining dialogue, and experimenting with new cinematic techniques. Over the years, various accounts have linked him to cannabis use during certain periods of his life, although many of the more sensational stories surrounding those claims remain disputed and cannot be verified with certainty. What historians consistently agree on is Welles' relentless pursuit of perfection. He challenged executives, questioned traditional filmmaking methods, and refused to compromise simply to satisfy studio expectations. That determination helped produce some of the most influential films ever made, even when it placed him in direct conflict with powerful Hollywood executives. Ironically, the same originality that made Welles a cinematic pioneer also made him difficult for the studio system to control. Projects were delayed, budgets became controversial, and creative disagreements often overshadowed his extraordinary achievements. Yet decades later, many of those once criticized ideas are now celebrated as milestones in film history. Actor number 6, Richard Burton. Richard Burton possessed the kind of voice that could command complete silence before he had even finished a sentence. With unforgettable performances in films such as Cleopatra and Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf, he became one of the most respected actors of his generation. Yet behind that commanding presence was a private life that fascinated the press almost as much as his work on screen. Much of the public attention focused on Burton's highly publicized relationship with Elizabeth Taylor and his well-documented struggles with alcohol. But historians and biographers have also noted that, during different periods of his life, Burton experimented with cannabis as part of a broader search for relaxation and creative escape. While many stories about those experiences have grown into Hollywood legend, separating documented history from later exaggeration remains difficult. What cannot be questioned is Burton's extraordinary dedication to his craft. Directors often praised his ability to transform lengthy dialogue into emotionally powerful performances, bringing intelligence and intensity to every role he accepted. His remarkable command of language made even the most complex characters feel authentic, earning admiration from audiences and fellow actors alike. As Hollywood evolved through the 1960s and 1970s, Burton found himself balancing worldwide fame with increasing personal pressures. The contrast between his polished public image and his complicated private life became part of the fascination surrounding his career, reminding audiences that even cinema's greatest stars face struggles hidden behind the spotlight. Actor number 7, Ava Gardner. To movie audiences around the world, Ava Gardner represented the very definition of classic Hollywood glamour. Her striking screen presence, natural confidence, and unforgettable performances made her one of MGM's brightest stars. Yet beyond the flashing cameras and red carpets, Gardner lived a life that rarely fit the polished image studios worked so hard to protect. During Hollywood's golden age, major studios invested enormous effort in shaping the public identities of their biggest celebrities. Every interview, photograph, and public appearance was carefully managed to preserve the illusion of perfection. Gardner, however, developed a reputation for resisting those expectations. She valued personal freedom, disliked artificial publicity, and often chose honesty over carefully rehearsed public relations. Biographers have described her as someone who embraced an adventurous lifestyle and enjoyed the company of artists, musicians, and filmmakers who challenged conventional social norms. Over the years, various accounts have suggested that cannabis was occasionally part of those circles, although many of the specific stories remain impossible to confirm with complete historical certainty. What is well documented, however, is Gardner's determination to live life according to her own rules rather than the image others expected her to maintain. That independent spirit became one of the defining characteristics of her career. Even when studio executives worried about headlines or public perception, Gardner continued delivering performances that captivated audiences and strengthened her reputation as one of Hollywood's most gifted actresses. Actor number 8, Debbie Reynolds. For generations of moviegoers, Debbie Reynolds embodied Hollywood's brightest and most wholesome image. With unforgettable performances in classics like Singin' in the Rain, she became a symbol of optimism, charm, and timeless elegance. To the public, she appeared to be everything the golden age of Hollywood wanted its stars to represent. But behind that carefully polished image was a far more private and complicated reality. Unlike many celebrities whose personal lives constantly made headlines, Reynolds guarded her privacy with remarkable discipline. Friends and biographers often described her as someone who understood the enormous pressure that came with living under Hollywood's spotlight. Throughout the years, various accounts have suggested that she experimented with cannabis during certain periods of her career as a way of coping with stress, although many of the specific stories remain unverified and continue to be debated by historians. What is beyond question is her extraordinary professionalism. Directors consistently praised her preparation, reliability, and determination to deliver outstanding performances regardless of the personal challenges she faced away from the cameras. Even during difficult periods in her life, Reynolds rarely allowed private struggles to interfere with her work, earning the respect of colleagues across the film industry. Her ability to separate public responsibility from private life became one of the defining features of her career. While audiences saw a confident Hollywood icon, Reynolds quietly navigated the intense expectations placed upon one of America's most beloved entertainers. Actor number 9, Veronica Lake. Few actresses captured Hollywood's imagination as completely as Veronica Lake. With her signature peekaboo hairstyle and unforgettable screen presence, she became one of the defining faces of film noir during the 1940s. Audiences admired her elegance, mystery, and effortless charm, turning her into one of Paramount Pictures' biggest stars almost overnight. But behind the glamorous image, her life was far more complicated than movie fans ever realized. At the height of her fame, Lake faced enormous pressure to maintain the flawless persona that studios had carefully created. Every public appearance, interview, and film performance was expected to reinforce that image. Yet biographies of the actress describe a woman struggling with anxiety, personal difficulties, and the overwhelming demands of celebrity life. Over the years, various writers have claimed that cannabis was among the ways she attempted to cope with those pressures, although many of the more dramatic stories remain disputed and cannot be confirmed with complete historical certainty. What is well documented, however, is that her relationship with Hollywood became increasingly difficult. Production delays, conflicts with filmmakers, and growing personal challenges gradually affected her career, allowing rumors to spread faster than verified facts. As often happened during Hollywood's golden age, speculation frequently overshadowed reality, making it difficult to separate genuine history from industry gossip.